After an exhausting night shift, the young woman's sole desire was to collapse into bed and fall into a deep sleep. However, a rather unpleasant surprise awaited her at her own doorstep. Her mother-in-law blocked her path, declaring, "First, go to the store and pick up some groceries. 5 kilograms of marbled beef and a tin of black caviar. 8 of my hungry relatives are already gathered at the table, and your husband is just smirking out the window." Hello, dear listeners. I'm delighted to welcome you to my channel. I have a new intriguing story for you. Enjoy. Marina stepped off the bus at her usual stop at 6 in the morning, just as the city was beginning to stir. 12 hours in intensive care leave you with more than just fatigue. It's a sensation where your legs ache as if you've been walking on broken glass, and your mind feels like it's shrouded in fog. She worked as a nurse at the city hospital, and those night shifts drained her completely. Today, however, marked the end of a grueling 3-day consecutive stretch of work, and her only dream was to reach her bed and immerse herself in sleep for at least 8 hours. The apartment, situated on the 4th floor of a 5-story building, had been inherited by her and her husband from his grandmother. 38 square meters in the city center was a veritable treasure in today's market. Marina ascended the staircase, gripping the railing, already envisioning herself shedding her uniform, taking a shower, and face-planting into her pillow. But as she reached for her keys, the door wouldn't open. A key was protruding from the inside. "Ilya," Marina knocked. "Open up, please." There was no response. She knocked louder. "Ilya." Footsteps sounded from within, but it wasn't her husband who opened the door. Standing before Marina was Lyudmila Fyodorovna, her mother-in-law resplendent in a burgundy robe, her hair set in curlers, and wearing an expression as if Marina had arrived to beg for a loan. Quote 4. The mother-in-law asked, not budging and completely blocking the entrance. Quote 5. Marina pleaded. Quote 6. Lyudmila Fyodorovna crossed her arms over her chest. Vague silhouettes loomed in the hallway behind her. Quote 7. Marina, overcome with exhaustion, didn't immediately process what she'd heard. Quote 8. Quote 9. The mother-in-law thrust a crumpled piece of paper at her. Quote 10. Marina mechanically took the paper and read the spidery handwriting. 5 kilograms of marbled beef, a tin of black caviar, champagne, Moet and Chandon, 3 bottles Parmesan cheese, tiger prawns, 2 kilograms prosciutto. Lyudmila Fyodorovna shrugged. Quote 13, quote 14, quote 15. Marina tried to peer into the apartment. Indeed, about 8 people were seated in the living room, all unfamiliar faces, talking loudly and laughing. Someone had already opened a bottle of beer. Quote 16, quote 17. Her mother-in-law called out. Quote 18. Her husband appeared in the doorway, glanced at Marina, and turned back to the window. He simply stood there, gazing out, as if the unfolding scene didn't concern him at all. "Ilya, tell your mother." "The mother's right," he grumbled without turning around. "Go on, you won't fall apart." Something inside Marina snapped, not loudly, not with a crack, but softly, like a thread that had been stretched too taut for too long. "I don't have that kind of money," she stated in a level voice. "What do you mean, don't have?" Lyudmila Fyodorovna frowned. "You work. Marbled beef costs 3,500 rubles per kilogram. Caviar starts at 5,000, champagne at 8. Do the math yourself." "Well, you don't have to buy the absolute most expensive." The mother-in-law waved her hand. "Just get something cheaper. The main thing is that there's food on the table. I'm off my shift. I need to sleep." "You'll sleep after you go. What's this, being childish like a little girl, an adult woman acting like this?" One of the men in the living room, stout, bald, and wearing a stretched-out T-shirt, leaned into the hallway. "Lyudka, what's the holdup?" he called. "We'll be eating soon, right, Gennady?" "Just a moment, Gennady. Your sister-in-law is going to the store." "I am not going," Marina stated. "What do you mean, not going?" Lyudmila Fyodorovna raised her voice. "I'm asking you humanely. You're not letting me into my own apartment. Our apartment, the mother-in-law corrected. Your husband's apartment from his grandmother. You're only temporarily registered here. I am Ilya's wife. I live here. If you behave like this, you won't live here long. Lyudmila Fyodorovna jabbed her finger into Marina's chest. Marina stood on the landing, the list of delicacies in her hand, feeling an overwhelming fatigue wash over her, making her want to simply sit down on the floor and cry. But she didn't cry. She turned and walked down the stairs. "That's right, go," her mother-in-law yelled after her, "and don't come back without the groceries." Marina stepped out onto the street. A typical May day was unfolding. People hurried along the sidewalk on their way to work. She pulled out her phone and dialed her friend. "Lena, can I come over and crash at your place?" "Of course." "What happened?" "I'll tell you later." At Lena's apartment, she sank onto the sofa and fell asleep the moment her head hit the pillow. She woke up 10 hours later, feeling as though an entire lifetime had passed. Lena was in the kitchen with tea, listening intently to Marina's jumbled account. "That's just beyond rude," her friend exclaimed. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Maybe call your husband." Marina looked at her phone. 2 missed calls from Ilya. A message. "When are you coming back?" She didn't reply. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Marina slept at Lena's, went to her shifts, and returned to her friend's place in the evenings. Ilya called twice a day. She didn't answer. He sent messages. "Marina, what's going on? Mother has already left. You can come back. Why are you acting like a child?" On the 4th day, he ambushed her outside the hospital. "Can we talk?" he asked, stepping out of his car. "Talk." "Not here, out on the street." "It's fine here." Ilya sighed and put his hands in his pockets. "Marina, stop sulking already. Mother got a little heated. She admits she went too far. She does. I've explained things to her. She understands." "And what does she understand?" "That she shouldn't have sent you to the store after your shift." Marina smirked. "So what should she have done?" "Well, ask nicely." "Ilya, she wouldn't let me into the apartment. My apartment. Our apartment." He winced. "It's an exaggeration to say she didn't let you in. She just asked for your help. Standing there, demanding you buy food worth 20,000 rubles for her relatives. They're not just relatives. That's my Uncle Gina, Aunt Sveta, their children. I don't care. I don't know them. And why should I be feeding them?" Ilya rubbed his face with his hands. "God, but you understand. My mother has a small pension. She can't afford such groceries. My salary isn't astronomical either, 42,000 a month." "Well, you could have bought something less expensive. After a night shift, instead of sleeping, maybe an hour of your time." Marina looked at him, at his familiar face, the usual bewilderment in his eyes, his constant desire to smooth things over, to remain silent, to concede. 3 years ago, when they got married, it had seemed endearing. He was calm, accommodating, unobtrusive. Now she realized it wasn't gentleness of character, but simply an unwillingness to resolve anything. Quote 65, quote 66, quote 67, quote 68. Something in his tone. That condescending quote 69 settled everything for good. Quote 70, Marina said. Quote 71. Quote 72. Ilya stared at her. Quote 73, quote 74, quote 75, quote 76. He raised his voice. Quote 77, quote 78, quote 79. Marina turned and walked towards the bus stop. He caught up to her and grabbed her arm. Quote 80, quote 81, quote 82. He stopped short, seeing her gaze. Quote 83, quote 84. She pulled her arm free and walked away. The next day, she went to Lena's apartment with 2 large suitcases and packed her belongings while Ilya was at work. Fortunately, her mother-in-law didn't show up, but she left a note on the table. Quote 85 Lena offered for her to stay permanently, but Marina declined. A week later, she found a room in a communal apartment not far from the hospital, costing 8,000 rubles a month. But it was her own. Lyudmila Fyodorovna reappeared 2 weeks later, calling Marina's phone with a saccharine, conciliatory voice. "Marinochka, my dear daughter, why did you abandon Ilyushenka? He's completely distraught. He's lost weight." "Lyudmila Fyodorovna, I have nothing to discuss with you." "Oh, really? I'm his mother. I'm worried. Perhaps we could meet and have a heart-to-heart talk." Marina understood where this was heading, but agreed simply to put an end to it. They met at a cafe near the metro. Lyudmila Fyodorovna arrived dressed to the nines, in a new coat, with her hair styled, smelling of expensive perfume. "Here, I brought you some piroshki," she said, placing a container on the table. "I baked them myself, with cabbage, just how you like them." Marina had never mentioned liking cabbage piroshki. "Thank you, no need." "Oh, come on, take them. You probably don't eat properly, living alone." Lyudmila Fyodorovna ordered a cappuccino and a croissant and leaned back in her chair. "So, Marina, let's talk like grown-ups." "I'm listening." "You see, I am, of course, at fault for how things turned out." The mother-in-law feigned remorse. "I was just very worried. Relatives came, and I didn't have any money to treat them properly. My pension, you know, is only 15,000. A third of that goes to utilities for the apartment." "The apartment where Ilya is registered, he pays the utilities." "Well, you see, not him, but you together. Your family." Lyudmila Fyodorovna took a sip of coffee. "So I thought you, as family, would help. But how could I have known you'd get so offended? You didn't let me into the apartment." "Oh, come on, I didn't not let you in. That's an exaggeration. I just asked you to go to the store first. It's just awkward. Guests are sitting there hungry." "Why didn't you ask Ilya?" "Oh, he was tired from work." "And I wasn't?" Lyudmila Fyodorovna pursed her lips. "You, my dear, are rather touchy, making a drama out of trifles. My Ilyushenka is suffering now. He barely eats. He's absent-minded at work. He could be fired, you know." "Ilya works as a programmer for a stable company. He won't be fired." "How do you know?" The mother-in-law raised her voice. "Anything can happen. And you abandoned him in a difficult moment. What kind of wife are you after that?" "The kind who isn't allowed into her own home." "My God, how much more?" Lyudmila Fyodorovna slammed her hand on the table. "I'm apologizing. What else do you want?" "Nothing. Exactly nothing. You're just spiteful. Do you think you'll find better? You won't. My Ilyushenka is a gem. He doesn't drink, and he has an apartment. You won't find another like him even with a search party." "Then let him live in his apartment." "Well, maybe he will, or maybe he'll find another girl, a more accommodating one. Not like you, and then you'll have only yourself to blame." Marina stood up and picked up her bag. "Lyudmila Fyodorovna, I'm leaving." "Leaving where? We haven't finished talking." "I have nothing to discuss with you." "Stay." The mother-in-law also jumped up, grabbing her sleeve. "Do you even understand what you're doing? You're ruining a family. Over what? Because I asked you to buy groceries?" Marina carefully freed her sleeve. "Because you decided you could boss me around. Because Ilya supported you. Because it's normal for you to throw a banquet at my expense and think I should be grateful." "Well, you should be. You're the daughter-in-law. It's our tradition." "Maybe it's yours, but not mine." She left, leaving Lyudmila Fyodorovna in the cafe with her cooling cappuccino and a container of pirochki. Ilya called every day. At first, he asked her to come back. Then he started accusing her of selfishness. Then he asked again. Marina didn't answer his calls, only sent short messages. Time passed. Work, shifts, rare meetings with Lena. Life in the communal apartment room was uncomfortable. The neighbor across the hall played the TV at full volume at night. The kitchen always smelled of someone else's food, but it was her own space where no one demanded, humiliated, or made her feel obligated. A month later, Ilya sent a message. Mother says she's ready to apologize. Come, let's talk all together. Marina looked at her phone screen, wondering if it was worth it. Then she imagined how it would play out. Lyudmila Fyodorovna with a strained smile. Ilya looking guilty. An awkward pause, and then again, well, okay, everything's settled, now come back and in a week it'll all happen again. Maybe not with groceries, but with something else. Maybe the mother-in-law will ask me to sit with her friend in the hospital or borrow money and not return it, or just show up at the apartment with keys and announce she'll be living with them for a month. No, Marina typed. Completely, Ilya replied. Yes, you'll regret it. She didn't regret it. A month and a half passed. Marina filed for divorce. Ilya initially didn't show up for the hearings. Then he came with a lawyer and demanded half of her belongings. The refrigerator, the washing machine, the television. Marina silently agreed to everything. The apartment remained his. She didn't lay claim to it. It was her husband's property, inherited from his grandmother. Lyudmila Fyodorovna sent a message after the divorce. You ruined my son's life. You'll burn in hell. Marina blocked the number. 3 months later, she ran into Lena at a shopping mall. Her friend was beaming. Listen, you won't believe who I saw. Who? Your ex with a new girlfriend. Quite young, about 20, I'd say. And you know what the funniest part is? Marina didn't know, and didn't particularly want to know, but Lena couldn't stop. Marina said without much emotion. It was even strange. No resentment, no anger, just a slight weariness from other people's problems. Lena looked at her attentively. You've changed? Lighter, somehow? Marina smiled. Perhaps. That evening, when she returned to her small rented room, a message arrived on her phone from an unknown number. She opened it. It was Lyudmila Fyodorovna, who had apparently changed her SIM card to bypass the block. Marina, I need your help. I have health problems. The doctors say I need surgery. Can you lend me 300,000? I'll return it, I promise. Ilyusha can't. He has a mortgage. Marina stared at the message for a long time, then typed a reply. Lyudmila Fyodorovna, please ask Ilya's new girlfriend. I'm sure she'll help. And she blocked the number again. A few months later, Marina moved from the communal apartment to a one-bedroom on the outskirts. It was more expensive, but at least it was proper housing. Work proceeded as usual. Life settled down. One day, a patient with a heart attack, a man around 55, was brought into the hospital. She was on duty in the ICU and saw his son accompanying him. He was worried, pale. The son sat in the corridor all night while his father was in the ward. And in the morning, when the doctors said the danger had passed, he wept with relief. Marina stood nearby filling out documents and suddenly thought, now that's a normal family, where a son worries about his father, where there's respect, support, where no one commands, demands, or sets conditions. She thought of Ilya and how she could have been in the place of that girl with the bags right now. And for the first time in all those months, she felt not just relief, but gratitude to herself for leaving. At lunchtime, she went to a cafe opposite the hospital, the very same one where she had once met Lyudmila Fyodorovna. She sat at a table by the window, ordered coffee, and suddenly saw them. Ilya, his mother, and that same girl were walking along the sidewalk, and the scene was painfully familiar. Lyudmila Fyodorovna was saying something, gesticulating wildly. Ilya was nodding, and the girl trailed behind with enormous bags in both hands. They entered the cafe. Lyudmila Fyodorovna walked to a table and sat down, not even glancing at the girl. Ilya settled in next to his mother. The girl put the bags on the floor, wiped her sweaty forehead, and sank into a chair. "Mashenka, bring me the menu," the mother-in-law said. The girl stood up and went to the counter. Marina saw her limping slightly. Her foot rubbed raw. Lyudmila Fyodorovna was saying something to Ilya, who was nodding. A typical family scene. Marina finished her coffee, picked up her bag, and headed for the exit. As she passed their table, she heard, "And then we'll go to Auchan. They have a special on shrimp. Mashenka, you don't mind, do you? You're young and strong." Marina stepped out onto the street. The sun was shining and a warm breeze was blowing. She took out her phone and texted Lena, "See you tonight. I want to go to the movies." "Of course, what are we watching? Something light, a comedy?" She walked down the street smiling. Her ordinary life lay ahead. Work, shifts, fatigue, a small apartment on the outskirts, a modest salary. But it was her life, and no one stood at her door anymore demanding she buy marbled beef and black caviar.